we are definitely glad to have Marcus join us. We already have a bunch of messages and things like that, and I already got people.
I'm an alumni. Excuse me, I'm an alumni.
He is an alumni of Startup Week and Detroit Startup Week in particular, so we're glad to have him back. He was our keynote in when we were not all in the pandemic world in 2018. And so we're glad to have him back for 2020 because we definitely, I think across the country, everyone is aware that things are a little different for businesses now than they were when they were a couple of years ago. So as these companies are shifting and changing, when Marcus reached out, I was super glad because that's exactly what he does. If you are unfamiliar with...
By the way, I just want to tell everybody, okay?
Uh-oh.
I actually reached out to Monica.
Yes, he did.
I checked my mailbox every day. There was no invite to Detroit Startup Week. I thought it would at least be on the mailing list. And somebody tagged me on a post. And I remember the unbelievable experience that I had. And I know how hard business is for people right now. So I reached out and said, listen, I know you have one slot left. You guys are filled up. It's Friday. We got to get our energy levels up. Right, Monica?
Yes, we do.
And I have a little bit of housekeeping myself.
Okay.
I know Wayne had his. So all these folks that are over here, I don't know if I'm going the wrong way, both ways, all these sponsors, it's really important to pay attention to those sponsors that are on there. And I know that Monica and other folks have mentioned it all week long. Without the support of folks like Quicken Loans and all the other sponsors here, these types of events don't happen. And so it's important to me as a business owner and you as a business owner that we recognize those sponsors who have delivered currency to us to be able to meet together, share information, and all I ask in return is that you patronize those businesses and validate their sponsorship with Detroit Startup Week. Obviously, as we head into 21, 22, 23, we want to make sure that those sponsors got a return on their investment. And so if you do business with those folks, great. If you don't, please do so that they'll be back supporting this wonderful organization for years to come.
Thank you. No, absolutely. That's our business model. I always cringe when I'm watching The Profit and things like that, because I'm like, if you would not like our business model is we rely on sponsorships, and it's super crucial that we respond and we're supporting local businesses as well as supporting the companies that go out of their way to make sure that the community around them is developed and has access for funding and growth and scaling for entrepreneurs, because that is the lifeblood of our city. So,
Monica, are you the one that goes out and makes these presentations to the sponsors?
Yes, I do. It's a huge part of what I do is really focused on, well, first off, obviously corralling the team and bringing everyone together, but definitely trying to figure out where we can fit and where we can, to your point, give them the best ROI for being involved.
What's a reasonable dollar amount for a sponsorship? What's a reasonable range? Some
sponsors come in at $5K. Some sponsors come in at like $20K. So somewhere in there, something like that. Especially when we have the live events, it's obviously more pricey. So between those ranges is what most people come in, and collectively the group of them allow us to have the programming each year.
Well, I'm going to make a commitment to you right now because I love what you're doing for a $20,000 sponsorship from me for next year. I'll figure out which brand I'm going to put on it. Okay. But it's important to me to drive currency into these models for both live and virtual events so that people continue to get the education, the information, the inspiration, the ideas that they need to be successful in either starting a business or continuing down the journey that they have. And if we have a live event next year, maybe I'll bring a surprise with me. So I'm going to come, even though you didn't invite me myself.
No, you'll be invited. You'll definitely be invited.
Okay. Let's get going.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you again for that, because we definitely rely on that. So we definitely appreciate that. That's going to go a long way for us to start planning for 2021. We are excited to have you here this year. For a lot of reasons, but most because your knowledge, just because of what you've learned and the way that you already interact with small businesses all around the country. And obviously, Detroit, if most folks here are from this area, knows that we've been in the middle of a kind of a resurgence of our startup ecosystem for the last 5 to 10 years or so. And this COVID crisis put all of the businesses in a space that they've never been in before. And we've been, nose to the grindstone, trying to help as many folks as possible not have to go under. And a lot of businesses have had to close and or lay off staff and or reduce costs drastically. And so as we're doing that, knowing and seeing some of the ways that you've solved problems for so many of the other companies that are on your show, definitely wanted to kind of get your perspective and allow folks to ask questions about either their individual businesses or business topics in general that would help them, get over this hurdle. We don't know when it's going to end. So I guess that's the first place to start, is that with this level of uncertainty, how do business owners plan? How can they possibly plan for stability and growth when we have no clue when the recession is going to be over, when the traffic will return, when, all those kind of things? How can they plan with this level of uncertainty?
Well, I think we've all learned, including myself, that none of us were prepared for this, right? I think the thing that I've learned the most in growing through this process is that we need to be prepared for uncertainty in general. Mm. And we need to be able to be nimble on our feet. And so the thing that I'm doing in my businesses and advocating to other people that they do is reshape the way they think about their business in terms of its nimbleness.
Okay.
So I don't know what electronic mediums people are doing business with. And I say that to not make it too techy. But we know that we have to be able to deliver the service or product that we have differently than we ever have before. So that's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, I think we have to brace ourselves both financially and emotionally for unexpected things like this. And I've learned that more businesses were unprepared financially, with not having a little bit of cash reserve, not having a plan. And if you liken it to when we were in elementary school, and once a quarter or once a year, or however often, they would have a fire drill. Mm-hmm. And they would tell you, okay, 8 o'clock in the morning, we're going to have a fire drill. We're going to pull the alarm, and you're going to file out in a single file line, and you're going to not talk, and you're going to walk down the stairs, and you're going to go out to the parking lot, and class A is going to go over here, class B is, and there was a plan. And we were practicing for what potentially could happen in that scenario. If you go all the way back 30, 40, 50, 60 years, our parents and grandparents were planning on what if there was a war? What if something happened? How do we plan for it? In certain parts of the country, we prepare for what if there's a hurricane? We board up our windows. We do all these things. I don't know why we as business leaders, me included, never really thought about the possibility of being shut down.
Yeah.
And because it never happened and there wasn't a playbook to look for. But on a positive note, I think we're all learning how to readapt, readjust, reimagine, reinvent ourselves in this moment. It is true, though, however, Monica, and it's sad, that there are businesses that were hanging by a shoestring back before COVID. Yeah. And there are people that are very angry that COVID happened. I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. I'm sad. I'm scared. I'm nervous. All the human emotions that we have, but I'm not angry. But there's people that are angry, and they're angry because they say, well, it's putting me out of business. Mm-hmm. First of all, there's a lot of people who may or may not be watching this right now that may have been out of business and they didn't know it.
Yes.
So this is definitely separating the go forwards from the, it was a good try. Mm-hmm. It's hard. And there are a number of businesses that I own that aren't going to make the cut. And I'm devastated by it. I'm disappointed in myself, but you can't just keep chasing something. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. And most people expect me to show up on the scene and just always provide rainbows and butterflies and unicorns. And the reality of it is that we're not living in that moment right now. We're living in a very real moment where we have to make some decisions. So I don't know what advice I have other than be sure that you want to be in business. Mm-hmm. Understand how to prevent this from happening again from a preparation standpoint. And then maybe lastly, how are you reinventing yourself and your business to move forward in this new normal? People keep asking me when it's going to be over. What's going to be over? The new way of doing business, the social distancing, the fear that kids have, the fear that moms have about taking their families in certain places. What are we talking about here? And the longer this goes on, the more it becomes the new normal.
Yes.
So I think we have to all prepare ourselves for how would we do business if this went on for 5 years? And people are saying to me, no, it's not going to go on for 5 years. Maybe not.
Yeah.
But what if another virus comes or another something happens? So how do we pivot ourselves to deliver our service, our learning, our training, our goods, our retail products? How do we pivot ourselves in this moment to do it? Because commodities aren't going to go away. We're still going to buy shirts. We're still going to eat food. We're still going to want to have a glass of wine. We're still going to want to buy a pen and glasses and all these things that we have. And if I'm a deliverer of that service or product, how am I going into tomorrow and looking at it differently? How am I using social media to deliver currency and products? How am I using my website? How am I using a variety of things to deliver that product and service that we never have thought of before? And I don't know to that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we talk about a lot with some of our accelerator groups and some of our different cohorts was exactly that. The market hasn't course corrected in a while. So I like when you mentioned that the folks who didn't know they were already out of business. I've heard you say that before, and I agree with that because I think they never got course corrected, so they weren't prepared. And then I think too, the same thing is that a lot of companies weren't being, fiscally smart, and they didn't have any cushion whatsoever. They were living ahead, well ahead of their receipts. And I think that this exasperated that because none of us were prepared. We thought, we had the summer to make it up, or, Christmas is coming and all those things. So.
And by the way, last year wasn't a great year.
No, it wasn't.
So we went into 2020 thinking, okay, I tightened up some things. I got it right. Okay, last year was tough. I'm going to make it. And I'm hanging literally by a shoestring with no working capital going into 2020 thinking, I'm going to make it up. It didn't happen.
No, and it likely was. And that's the other part too. I agree with the thought of consider this a new normal for the foreseeable future. I think for folks right now, there's two sides of it though, when they think about how are they going to survive while they're trying to figure out what their own new normal is. And part of that is, thinking through funding, and part of that is thinking through a new strategy for operations. And so many companies went digital that swore they weren't going digital for the next decade. So now they're operating a whole new type of business than they've ever operated before. And they don't have the, face-to-face that they usually have that kind of wins them their business or was their way that they won business. So
you either go digital or you go out of business.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So have you seen so I know one of your core businesses is in the RV space. And I know that's something that I was surprised. And I think you talk about a commodity and things like that, but I remember years ago, you probably don't know this, but years ago, I actually worked for you as a freelance person for the RV business, doing web analytics. And I remember being completely surprised that there was so much traffic on RVs on the web. And I was just like, I didn't know so many people talked about this. And I remember, this is when, I won't date myself, but this is a long time ago, but I remember thinking this makes a lot of money. I'm like, this makes a lot of money. This is solid money in here because of this level of traffic that I never would have imagined. So I guess that's my next question for you. What is your thought for maybe the unsexy businesses that are maybe commodities or maybe standard parts of society? How can people identify some of those and maybe figure out if those are ways that they can pivot their business or either their thought process?
That's a super question. And it's the same question I get all the time when people say, what kind of business should I start? And I would tell them to stand in front of a mirror and look at themselves and think about the things that they buy and use. Mm-hmm. And the things that they buy and use every day, when they're broke, when they're rich, when there's a virus, when they're sick, what are the things that we always have to have? And that's a question that a lot of people have never asked themselves. And unfortunately, I get frustrated when people can't answer it. Mm-hmm. If you said to me 5 years ago, what's one business that's recession proof? I would say salons. Mm-hmm. People always want to they want to have their hair right. They want to look good. They want beauties. Exactly. Pets. is an important thing. Like you're going to take care of your pet before you take care of yourself. In this environment, we've been turned upside down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know yet what it is. And we've been living in this crisis mode for the last 90, 120 days that we haven't had a chance to swallow it. I actually believe it or not, right now in 2020, with the unbelievably crazy political environment and the unbelievably crazy social injustice that's going on out there, this is the best time ever to start a business.
I said that. I agree. I agree.
You take a minute, you take a beat, and you really think about what you're going to start and how you're going to deliver it. Because everybody else right now, including myself, is like, you're almost like trying to catch a falling knife.
Mm-hmm.
You know you're going to get cut. You know some blood's going to splat out because we're existing business owners and we're trying to reimagine our business in a new world. Mm-hmm. As a starter of a new business, I'm not dealing with all the noise. I have a very clear path, and I can identify a market or an industry that I think has some opportunity, and I have nothing to reinvent, just something to invent. And I think it's a unique opportunity. We know that people keep saying, I want to do it on the web. I want to do it on the web. I want to do it on the web. And I have found that I don't think the web works without a fine complement of social media to attach to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like telling the story and leaving out a chapter. I think you actually need a platform that takes e-commerce and social media and links them together so that storytelling can become more than just putting a product or a service on a page, click here, buy now.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need that story to go along with it.
No, I definitely agree. Yeah, I'm right with you. I've said that the same thing about, because a lot of folks will ask, like, should I stop my business? Should I go back into corporate, or should I start this new thing? And I think there's a pause that's going on in society right now that's allowing for discovery that has never been before, that allows people to stop, do exactly what you're saying, stop and think and figure out where they fit and where they don't fit. Whereas before we were all moving so fast, we didn't have that moment, and we have that moment now. We'll have it until things calm down a little bit more, and we're figuring out like which states are going to be open and all that good stuff. So I definitely agree. So I think my next question is, we've been looking at, planning, talked a little bit about planning for the recession. And we talked a little bit about like those metrics that let you know. Well, I guess that's what I want to learn more about next. Those metrics that let you know stay or go. And
are we in a recession?
I was told, I read that we are officially in it. About a week ago, I read that we were officially in it, but I haven't seen that widespread. So I don't know if that was one, newscaster's perspective of, numbers, but being that being the case, assuming that it's been official and it's been validated, those metrics on stay versus go, like those aren't going to be stable for a while. Being able to predict customers' traffic isn't going to be stable for some time. And those commodities are key, but a lot of them have issues now too with supply chain and getting shipping through China and all these different places where people normally get their products. So with those being the cases, we're in the service space or in other commodity spaces, those high opportunities, where do you see those coming from?
Well, let's go back. I sort of teased you with my recession question. It's very difficult for me to accept any edict that comes down right now, because the factors that feed into that formula are really, they're very jumbled right now. And I keep arguing with people, unfortunately, where they tell me, well, look, unemployment's 30 million people. Well, yeah. I mean, of course it's 30 million people. Businesses were told to shut down. And then the government provided an apparent path to go out and get unemployment. And I use the word apparent, apparent path to go out and get unemployment. So if you tell a bunch of people, okay, we're going to shut your businesses down, we're going to create an unemployment benefit that's better than you even pay people and better than it was, how did you not create this self-fulfilling prophecy that brought us to this? So I sense very real that there is unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that a lot of the unemployment is self-inflicted.
Mm-hmm.
I also know that a lot of the unemployment at the current pace, if people followed the process, people are getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
So creating this artificial vacuum of currency in the marketplace, when in fact people that are unemployed may be making the same or more than they were making when they were employed. So you have all this cash flowing into the market. And the reason that I always challenge you and everybody else about this recession is I go to the grocery store and people are buying things they don't need.
Yes, they are. Mm.
I look at what the online numbers are for Amazon. They're buying things they don't need. I look at what big retailers that sell apparel and other goods are doing. They're selling things that people don't need. So are we in a recession, or are we in a conversion or a diversion of how money's actually flowing? There's a lot of money in the marketplace right now.
I'd agree with that. We've heard a lot of we'll talk about the unemployment and the levels, and then also too pluses and minuses. I know it didn't really work for a lot of communities, especially the underrepresented community, like the PPP. Just didn't get the portions of the loans. But I saw a ton of folks who not only got PPP, but then were able to stack that with grants and other programs and things like that. So I definitely can see and understand that piece of looking at more broadly, the money flowing from spaces that aren't sustainable, and from ways that you can't actually model against because they got these big bonuses.
This is in my opinion, this is the most pivotal moment in our country's history right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't about COVID. It's what COVID caused.
Yeah.
And it's what the social injustice has caused, and that perfect storm that's come together. And I know a number of minority-owned businesses that were not able to process the same level of PPP money
Mm-hmm.
that they, quite frankly, are entitled to.
Mm-hmm.
PPP money does not belong to the government.
Mm-hmm.
It belongs to the people that paid into the government, like you and me and everybody else out there. And there are a number of brown and black business owners who have not been afforded the same opportunity to access capital in good times, in bad times, in any times, because they haven't been afforded the opportunity to understand the process to get there. And nobody has actually followed through
Mm-hmm.
in the access of that process. And so right now it's become a huge thing for me to divert a lot of my attention to providing resources and education and information and access to capital to those folks who previously were not able to do it. And if we don't do it, and I'm not talking about the banks sponsoring a program for minorities where there's going to host a seminar, which is a bunch of BS, excuse me. I'm talking about people writing checks, putting their money where their mouth is, spending time, providing labor for this country to neutralize and equalize the opportunity for people, particularly business owners, to get on their feet. And I think this is a pivotal moment where a disproportionate amount of that needs to go towards those communities that historically have not been given that opportunity.
No, I 100% agree. That's the bulk. A lot of my work is general market, but the bulk of my work is in diversity and inclusion for exactly that reason. Just even looking at so many folks within the PPP process who not only couldn't apply, were applied in multiple spaces, were turned down in all of those spaces, even though their numbers were correct and all their data was correct. But a lot of it was lack of, I'll use your word, apparent banking relationship, lack of those things. That was their reasoning why they were denied. But in all reality, it's a death knell to a lot of those businesses to still not be able to get the funding where they were already in a dearth of funding, as it were. So
that's because a lot of the banks and a lot of the big retail chains have decided to create deserts in certain communities where no branches and the resources aren't there and the human capital isn't there to process those for those folks. And, unfortunately, I live in Chicago and I'm working now on projects in Brownsville and in Inglewood, which are tougher communities that have not been afforded those same opportunities. And when I meet with some of the folks like I did last week, I'm really finding out listen, we have our numbers together. We have everything together. My business is good. I made money last year. My taxes are paid. Like, I'm just trying to figure it out, but I don't know who to call.
Exactly.
And nobody's taking my damn call.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a friend who lives in downtown Chicago near Michigan Avenue that can access the Capitol because their buddy who they work out with at the gym is a banker, and they can make a phone call.
And they're
And
all
at the end of the day, we need to come up with a fintech solution, a finance technology solution that allows for it. Here's the problem. I was down in some of these neighborhoods that don't have cell towers, and they don't have the access to Wi-Fi. And so I'm sorry to divert on this topic, Monica, but it's really important to me as we look at all these sponsors that are here and all these folks that have been here this week, that this is not a COVID issue. We have businesses going out of business every single day right now because nobody's paying attention to them. And the PPP loans were good for certain people.
I know very few people who got one.
I know a lot of people who got them.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people who are minorities who got them.
Okay.
But there were minorities who were in neighborhoods that it was normal course of business.
Okay.
Okay. And so I think it's a geographic problem as much as it is a skin color and a race problem. It is a geographic problem. And the thing that I've been pounding on the most, and to be totally candid with you, what attracted me to reach out to you guys, because I forgot that that you guys were having this time of year, is that somebody needs to say something.
Yeah.
And somebody needs to do something.
Yeah.
And so I worry about the ability for businesses to get back on their feet. I worry about the ability for a lot of people to get back on their feet. But several $1 billion were flushed into the marketplace, into small businesses. Billion. Like hundreds.
Will we see that? Will we see that effect? That's what we're looking for.
I better not see people stick it in their pocket.
Right. No, I agree. I think that was one of the things that I was particularly impressed about, that within the Detroit community when this happened, just the way that our community rallied, and the way that folks tried to do exactly what you said, like sit and roll their sleeves up and figure out, could they, they had a plan for, 2 years down the road, could they divert some of that back to aid now to help businesses now? Because they knew that a lot of folks were going to be in exactly this spot. And the other side of it is I work with general market businesses, obviously, but I also work very heavily with tech businesses. And a lot of them didn't qualify for almost anything, just because of the nature of the business, just because the way that they had employees.
They didn't have a lot of employees and they didn't have rent.
A lot of employees, yes. So, but yet they were, like you mentioned, fully functioning businesses that were profitable and doing the things that they were supposed to do, but they didn't meet the criteria because the criteria was built on an older model based on mass levels of headcount in order to prove that a business was viable. So I think that was one of the things, and I liked seeing some of the efforts in our community, all the different groups, many of which who are sponsors on the screen next to us, who came together and said, okay, well, what can we do for not only for Detroit businesses, but what can we do for tech entrepreneurs? But still, there were many folks that were left out. Many folks who came, completely devastated, help. And there's only so much you can do. And even, our group is a mass community-based organization, but even our group, a lot of weight to have that many people reaching out at the same time. And that was one of the reasons why we wanted to go ahead and have Startup Week, because we wanted to get the opportunity to help people where we could. And we knew that this was one effort and one way that we could do that. So definitely appreciate you saying that and being aware of that, because that is something that I don't see in a lot of businessmen, just being honest, that I work with and that I talk to, just being aware of some of the issues and some of the ways that those issues affect the community and the broader economic development that's impacted.
And Monica, part of the reason that I feel this way, and I want to be very transparent with you, part of the reason that I feel this way is I started reflecting, and COVID's created a lot of empty space and time.
Mm-hmm.
We're sort of like sitting around staring at stuff, and you're able to pray about stuff and you're able to reflect about stuff. And I think the conclusion that I came to was really largely around the domino effect.
Okay.
And if we continue to see certain neighborhoods or certain groups of people left on the side of the road when their needs aren't being met, we're creating this ripple effect of almost this perpetual spiral.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to think about how I would liken it. So like if I got a cold and I continue to go outside in the rain and not wear a hat and not take cold medicine, I'm going to continue to get sick. And at some point it's going to get worse and worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you deal with it? You insulate that person who has a cold. You don't let them go outside. You button them up a little bit more. You give them more protection. You give them medicine. You give them the resources they need to get healthy again.
Yes.
The difference is for a lot of these communities and a lot of these folks, they were never healthy to begin with. And then they got sick.
Yes.
And nobody's actually insulating them. And so from a society standpoint, I'm a capitalist. I'm a total capitalist. And I don't believe in socialism, but I do believe in social justice.
Okay.
And there's a really big difference. Like capitalism with social justice really says that I'm okay with people making money, and making a profit and being successful is not an evil thing to accomplish.
Agreed.
Okay? But I also believe that we have a civil, moral, ethical responsibility to afford people the opportunity to succeed. I'm a hand up, not hand out kind of guy.
Yes.
And I have experienced in my own life where I've given people, and you've seen it on the show, I've given people sometimes who don't deserve an opportunity a chance. They blow it.
I have seen that.
And I've given people less of an opportunity than I should have that do deserve it, and they prove me wrong. And I learned over time how I needed to grow as an individual, how I needed to grow as an investor or a mentor or an educator or a business owner, that I have to really see business investing and business education as a social responsibility, as an obligation, and not as a...
I said we're aligned on that.
Yeah. And so I really feel like peer pressure, social pressure is going to be what may flip that coin.
Okay.
And so that's part of the reason why I wanted to be here today. I'm hoping that people understand, if you're not helping other people better themselves, I'm coming for you.
All right. Well, I'm right with you. I think we're aligned in that. That's a passion of mine, and I like to see it. I'm a big fan, and obviously been watching you do the same. I do want to. I know. I got people texting me like, I want to ask my. So I'm going to ask a few questions so that people can get some of the questions in. So in this, the top one says, Marcus, you seem to show a lot of genuine empathy, both on your show and in real life. Can you talk about why that's so important to you, and what startups who are raising money need to look for in terms of empathy and emotional intelligence from potential investors?
First of all, I have a lot of room for improvement as it relates to empathy. I work at it every day. I fail at it a lot. And I know that I have to get better at it. And so the only way to get better at something is to practice and put myself out there and make myself vulnerable. Part of the reason that I am the way that I am is because I always felt like the guy that wasn't picked for dodgeball. I was always the last one picked, the one never invited to the party. And it's a lonely place to be. And I don't like to feel lonely. Nobody likes to feel lonely.
No.
Part of the reason I made my life really built around small business from an investment and an educational standpoint is that I wanted people to not feel like I felt. I just really felt like it's a lonely place. And I'll leave the names out, but I don't like it when big institutions or big companies want to make small business almost like I'm a special needs child.
Yeah.
We're going to help you out. We're going to have a special day for you. We're going to tell everybody to come shop with you. So we're going to have Small Business Saturday once a year. We're going to tell everybody, shop to the business in your neighborhood. So I got tired of watching small businesses be treated like they were less than, be given resources that they were less than. And I drew this parallel to how I felt. And really the empathy comes from an understanding of how it feels to be the last one picked or how it feels to be the one ignored, or how it feels to be the one that hasn't been given a chance. Now, in recent years, I've been very blessed where I've been given an opportunity to do things. I've been very blessed where I have good people that want to work with me every day that make my businesses better because of them, not because of me. And I think it's important. And so when you're out there raising money and you're trying to grow your business, you have to find people that are like-minded, because you're never going to be able to convince people in short order that they should vote for you or they should support you, because their mind isn't wired that way.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to find people like you, Monica, or people like me that understand what it felt like to not be given a chance.
100%. We're aligned on that.
There's a lot of money out there, and I have to figure out how to create that network. There's a lot of money out there for people who want to start a business and who own a business that's struggling, from people that got a lot of no's before or struggled, that were given a chance by one person and made it big, that wants to give it back. We have to find those people
and match them.
That they exist. We should create like a dating show.
I'm so game. No, seriously, I'm seriously so game. No, that's actually one of the next questions was, does Marcus foresee in the near future an on-location Detroit series with The Prophet? That would be amazing. I think that would be amazing too.
I think that what I would rather do is create a forum using Detroit Startup Year, not Detroit Startup Week.
Yeah.
We can maybe come up with a once-a-month scenario where we're matchmaking people, and whether we're doing it in person, whether we're doing it digitally. And I would start by peer pressuring those successful entrepreneurs from the Detroit area or in the Detroit area, or those successful companies, to start to fuel and feed pools of money for people to do it. But I think we have to create an educational platform to match it. Because if you raise money or you collect money from an investor, what matters more is not the collection of the funds, but the use of the funds.
Absolutely. And
so I don't want to do anything where I'm writing checks,
yes,
or I'm asking other people to write checks, and then the money's not being put to use the right way.
No, that's a big part of what we do. Venture Catalyst is the team that runs Startup Week. It's a huge part of what we do is the education, the business education aspect of it. So
do you provide funding as well?
Some of our programs do. We've had a couple of accelerators. We've worked with Backstage Capital and worked with Techstars, obviously. And through those programs, we provide funding. But our focus has really been about the ecosystem development and the connection piece, and then combining that with funding wherever possible. And we have several partners that we work with across the board.
One of the things that I want to tell anybody that's starting a business or trying to raise capital is that, yes, you need to have your numbers right. And yes, your presentation needs to be right. All of those things have to be right. That goes without saying. What I think people need to lean into more is making their case for the investment to be in them. And you've heard me on the show before. I'm investing in you, Monica, and you happen to own a business. But if the business goes bad, I'm still investing in you. Yes. So how are we going to pivot? And a lot of times a new startup idea evolves into, we thought we were going to sell oranges, and now all of a sudden we're an orange juice company.
Yes.
And that pivot, or that slight pivot, comes from trying things and having them not work out, from learning, getting more information. And so when you're making your pitch to raise money, you have to remember to always lead with, this is who I am, and this is why I'm asking you to invest in me, and this is my business. Not, this is my business and I'm second. Agreed.
It's always the jockey. It's always the jockey. And so we talk about that a lot. It's always the jockey. It's not the horse, because the ideas are going to change. I think every accelerator and hackathon or large scale program we've ever ran, the folks that start out at the beginning end up with something completely different. But the outputs are intensified. Like the scale is there, but it was the person that we believed in. And so we've seen that a lot. So I 100% agree with that as well.
Good.
Okay. So a couple more of these. Okay, that's a big one. Okay, so one of them is asking really about crisis management. And so obviously we're in the midst of crisis management. You have to manage people. You're pretty good with that. we see that a lot on your show. We see that a lot on some of the places where you're good with assessing people, but assessing people within a crisis timeframe. What are some tips or some feedback you can give folks who are in the midst of that and having to manage people in this framework for the first time?
The most important thing is full transparency.
Okay.
You got to be honest. People don't like bad news.
Yeah.
They don't like to give it and they don't like to receive it. But unfortunately, bad news is bad news. And trying to sugarcoat it or not say it or hide it or detour from it creates a level of mistrust. And the most important thing to do with your people in a crisis is to get them to raise their level of trust in you, raise their level of comfort with what you're telling them, that it's accurate, even if it's not good information. And so if I said to you, Monica, unfortunately, I'm going to have to lay you off for 60 days. And it is absolutely my intention to bring you back. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to fight like heck to bring you back. Now, if you would like to collect unemployment, I'm going to help you do that. Mm-hmm. And if you want to stick around and help me out, but I can't pay you because we don't have any money, you have my word that I'm going to make it up to you in the future. I saw a lot of businesses that executed that strategy actually get people that wanted to stay and listen. I know you can't pay me right now. Pay that gal. Give me what you can. I'll appreciate whatever I can, or I'll go on unemployment, but I still want to help out. I think that level of transparency and sincerity and humility is very important. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think the second thing is you have to lead by example. So if you're asking other people to make sacrifices or cuts, they better see your butt do it too.
Absolutely.
So don't be rolling up in a brand new car, laid a bunch of people off or cut their wage, and they better see you working hard and they better see you trying everything that you can to make it work. Third and lastly is don't try to solve a crisis by yourself. Gather everybody in sort of some collective social distancing practicing model, but gather people together to try to figure out how we're going to accomplish this, how we're going to get through it. And remember that sometimes the quietest person that you didn't have much interaction before may be the person that can help you solve the problem the most.
I like that. No, I was just going to mention before, I definitely resonated with the first part because in particular, and a shout out to my team for Detroit Startup Week, because this is truly a labor of love. This is a volunteer-led organization, and largely we hired some contractors this past cycle, but largely the 5 years before, everyone did this because they were in it for the right reasons, and they were trying to, even though they knew it wasn't great, and they knew, we were hoping it would be a certain way, it was exactly those reasons. And when you said that's that transparency of letting everyone know, like, we're hoping we can, we're hoping that it'll work out, but this is what we're working with right now. That worked out more often than not than any other technique. So I definitely resonate with that. But
let me add one more to it. Constant communication.
Yeah.
We could all relate to applying for a job and going on the interview, and a day goes by and we're anxious, and a week goes by and we're more anxious. And it's like the lack of communication, even if it's bad news, creates such turmoil for people. Mm-hmm. It creates an unhealthy environment for everybody. And if I told you, if I checked in with you every day, even if it was in a group email about what was happening, you would at least understand that somebody was respecting who you were as an individual by taking the time to tell you what was happening.
Right.
And it's a sign of respect for me. And I watched a lot of people worry more about their business and themselves, which I understand, but your business doesn't exist without people. Just close. I mean, your ass is closed. You gotta communicate in a way that helps people feel respected in this moment. And then I don't know where the heck respect left the room, but it left a while ago, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, 100%. Another one is I've heard this, and they call them mastermind groups or things like that, but they're wondering if you have a specific circle of friends at your level that you connect with regularly, you just share challenges and ideas with. How are you like scoping out and bouncing ideas and things like that? How are you how are you making some of these decisions?
With my employees.
Okay.
I don't have any peers. I don't want any friends. My friends are the people that work with me every day. I have 15,000 of them. They're my family. They're my friends. They're my everything. I invest my whole life into them because they give me everything they have. And I don't need advice from people that don't know the business. I need advice from people that are on the front lines, that understand what the real issues are with the customers, with the facilities, with everything else. The best advice comes from the most unexpected places. And other smart people, I respect them and I admire them from a distance, but I spend 100% of my time getting feedback, bouncing ideas off, asking for advice, sharing my insecurities, sharing my concerns and my fears with the people that do the same with me.
Yeah.
I don't need advice from strangers. I need advice from my family.
No, I like it. Another one we have here is very relevant, especially for a lot of us who work in like ecosystem building and large scale. Like this is what we do. We bring a lot of people together, right? So obviously in this crisis, that's all gone. But this question is more specific to small businesses that operate that way. And many businesses have relied on trade shows, group gatherings, and live events to promote their business offerings and build these relationships, networking to do business. What do you see as the replacement for that activity or the channel right now to drive business and trust that ultimately support sales?
I would hope that as you did those things like the seminars and the trade shows and all those things, that you built up a following, both in email and in social media. Because I'm sure that everybody that's watching this or listening to this did an excellent job of collecting customer data, putting them into a CRM, asking people to follow them on social, putting them in their Rolodex. And I'm saying this to you with a little bit of tongue in cheek because we all were a little lazy in doing that. Mm-hmm. For those that did it, they've been able to execute a strategy of bringing their brand to life digitally. Mm-hmm. And so I've seen a lot of companies do Facebook Live product demonstrations, new product launches, demos, things of that nature. I've watched a lot of companies shoot videos in a controlled environment and they can send it out to their email list. And they're explaining to people using technology that's available to them. But if you didn't collect the information when you stood at your trade booth and you were too busy chit-chatting with somebody about nonsense and people were walking by and you didn't have an app to actually get people to enter to win a sweepstakes or get people to do different things, the most important lesson that every business owner learned through COVID is that they didn't do a good enough job collecting data.
That is very true.
And data is your friend. And so right now, you got to really work hard to figure out how you're going to build that database, that audience of people, and deliver them information. We typically, in my primary business, in the RV business, we typically go to shows. Mm-hmm. Sell a lot of product at arenas and stadiums and convention centers. And, you know, we're not going to any of those, even if they're happening. I'm not willing to put my teammates in that sort of environment where they could be exposed to bad things. Yeah. We started launching virtual shows and doing things that engage people. A great example is you. Okay. You are providing a resource for people and have for years, along with your team, of providing something that's in person. You could have easily just said 2020 Startup Week is canceled. But you saw the value of delivering the information in a different way. And while you may not have the same number of attendees live, you are going to have the same number of attendees and then some digitally. And so every company in America needs to understand that how they deliver information is similar to how TV watching has changed. If you looked at Nielsen ratings today for television shows, they're half of what they used to be. But if you add the DVR numbers to it, it used to be. People will take your information from your business the exact same way. And my wife's in the fashion business, and she said to me, "Honey, what are we going to do? There's no trade show this year. Like, how am I going to get product in?" So, okay, you got to reach out to your vendors. You got to ask how they can give you the information differently. And so we're learning how to do things differently, and it's okay. It'll be tough for a minute.
We don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. I have another one here. What are some innovative in this crisis, and this is kind of pivotal, we've all established that. What are some innovative ways that you would think people could bootstrap a new startup in order to scale up prior to pursuing other funding options?
I'm seeing a surge in crowdfunding and,
Yes.
and GoFundMe type stuff and things of that. I'm seeing a real surge in it. And I think you're seeing that people are rallying around business owners who have great ideas. I think you have to be careful what type of idea you're bringing to market. If you're bringing donuts, literally donuts to market, unless you have an interesting way of delivering it to people through the mail or through delivery in a contactless environment, don't tell me about your donut idea. You need to bring me ideas, and you need to bring the marketplace ideas to solve problems for people that they don't realize they have today. And so I would be starting up a business today that solved a problem for the new world that we're living in. The way I communicate, the way I receive things, the way I digest things, the way I communicate, the way I gather information, and products and services that are different. Fresh home delivery, food delivery services. And I think that, as I said to you in the beginning, stand in front of the mirror and ask yourself what you need and what you want. Because that means that somebody isn't solving it for you. And if they're not solving it for you, they're not solving it for anybody. And go think about those things and get into that space.
I like it.
Solve your own problem first, and then it'll ultimately solve everybody else's problem.
I think you're more passionate about it too when it's something that you can actually point to, like you said, in the mirror. I think you're 10 times more passionate. One other thought I was having is I've heard you say before, and I've only seen like one or two like tech focused companies that are on the profit or that you focus on, and you talked a lot about the overvaluation of those companies. So that's one of the things that we talk about all the time, and especially in the venture space right now, because in the midst of the COVID climate, those valuations that were already kind of in some ways and places questionable, now even more questionable because they're built on a lot of information that no one can possibly know. And so I'm curious what your thought is now about things like valuation and about fundraising and that as a path to growth, because I know that's something that traditionally you don't subscribe to.
I want to split that into two things. I have historically said publicly that I don't invest in technology.
Yes.
And it's not only because of the valuation, it's because I don't know it. And I'm scared of it. And when I don't, as an investor, when I don't know something or feel like I can have a conversation and stay in the conversation, I don't do it. It would be like Michael Jordan asked me if I wanted to play a pickup game. I'd be like, cool to tell people I play with them. But if I had to play for money, I'd be like, no, I'm good. Because I feel like the odds of me losing are high. No, they're not high. They're absolute. And so I really measure my willingness to try something based on my internal gut of whether I feel like I could succeed or not.
Okay.
When I don't know something, I get scared. Legitimately, I'm honest. Maybe that sounds corny. I get scared. I'm like, I don't want to be outsmarted. I don't want to be taken advantage of. I don't want to be dumb. So let me just stay in my lane.
Okay.
I've realized, though, that I can't just have that answer forever. That I do have to educate myself and give that answer at the same time until the point that I either surround myself with people that are infinitely smarter than me, which there are a ton of people, or start reading, start investigating, and start educating. Because if I don't want to do it, I'm going to get left behind.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, valuations are not something that anybody should ever argue or debate. It's a weird thing to say. And here's why I would say, if you don't agree with the valuation, don't invest. Mm-hmm. Move on. But there are people that are willing to invest at that valuation. So maybe the valuation is right. And so I look at a Tesla or I look at a whatever it may be, where people are questioning the valuation. Oh, it's too high, it's too low. It's like, if you don't like it, don't buy it. Don't invest in it. If you are on the other side of it and you are looking to raise capital and you've established a valuation and nobody's investing and nobody's saying yes, rather than arguing with people about the valuation, You have a litmus test. And the litmus test is you're getting a bunch of no's.
Mm-hmm.
If you constantly are getting no, you need to check yourself and think to yourself, look, I thought it was this. I tried. Nobody's biting. Maybe it's me. And so those are two different ways to go at valuation. As an investor, believe in it or don't. But if other people are doing it, don't criticize it. There's no need to publicly say, oh, that's overvalued, or that's just, say, keep your mouth shut. Respect what other people are doing, the work they're doing, and the work that people are doing to invest, and respect their space. If you see somebody that is struggling because their valuation is wrong, try to reason with them and explain to them why it's not right. But if they don't want to budge, that's it. Then that's it. Leave them alone. Respect their space.
No, I like it. No, I agree. The valuation question comes up all the time. People will pitch, and I'm sure you get 10 times more than I've ever gotten. People will pitch me on things that are just nonsensical and what they think that they're worth and what they're trying to get. And again, they just don't. They think if they pitch harder, then the answer will change. I think
my answer, Monica, in that situation would always be, I appreciate your valuation. And I am sure that you have your own justification for it. And I respect that.
Mm-hmm.
For me as an investor, I'm only comfortable deploying this much capital. And unfortunately, for that capital, this is what I would need in return. And I understand if it doesn't work for you. I totally get it. But maybe I'm not educated enough. And that's why my valuation and yours are off. Maybe I don't understand the space enough. And so when you can put it on yourself as like, maybe it's me, not you, but this is where I'm at. It's a nice way of saying to people, you're wrong. You're not telling somebody they're wrong, because nobody wants to have their dreams crushed. We've all been there. You and I've been there where people are telling us we're wrong and we get offended.
Yeah, no, of course not. And you try really hard not to do that. But at the same time, sometimes it's unavoidable. I want to see if we can get maybe one more in. I know we're all but out of time. We had something, one of the things that we talked about a lot, and I see it a lot on here, is basically the makeup of the team. And you talked a lot about your team being your family. And I think that is what I've seen in most businesses that are successful, is that the ones that are successful, they know how to respect and work together. And this is the take on vetting and maintaining those relationships, because I think that's the bedrock of a lot of these businesses, whether they're going to succeed or not, is whether the team can maintain a business that they're trying to create. So any thoughts on that as you're thinking about like a business's success or failure?
I'm going to answer the question and give you my closing spiel at the same time. Okay?
Let's do it.
A team really has to properly reflect society.
Okay.
And as part of my recent reflection, I've also thought about the fact that if I really want to grow my business, and I have to really know who my audience is. And if I know who my audience is, my team that runs the business should mirror the team that consumes the business. And so if you are a business that skews predominantly female on the commerce side, and you're a bunch of dudes running the business, that's going to be a problem. And so I likened it to how I thought about my Camping World business, which is really agnostic to gender, agnostic to race or religion or anything. It's just like, if you like the outdoors. But I noticed that the industry traditionally was a white male, was a white male business. And I started asking myself why. And as I went back and I looked at the history of the industry from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, it was a white male run business. And so if you are not matching the business and its leadership and management and staff with the consumer that digests the business, if you're not matching those two, mirroring them, you're never actually going to have a perfect match. Because the way you market and the way you communicate and the way you style and the way you deliver the offering is never going to match up, because you're never going to speak the same language. You're always going to be closely connected, not wholly connected. And so I really have worked hard over the last several years to try to make sure that the team I'm surrounding myself with is, number one, always smarter than me, making me feel not dumb, but making me feel like I'm going to school every day, learning something. I'm excited to like have somebody teach me something. And a lot of bosses and managers don't want that because they want to feel like the smartest man or woman in the room.
Oh.
Okay. There's a lot of people like that.
Okay.
Number two, your team is always looking for answers. And they come to you because you control information where you shouldn't, because you don't share enough. And you may not know the answer, but you make up one because you always want to be seen as the smart boss. It's okay to not know the answer and to allow your team to come up with the answer. I would rather say to people, I don't know. I don't know that answer. I'm kind of embarrassed that I don't know the answer. Why don't you get everybody together and see if y'all can come up with the answer? And if we don't have it, let's call somebody. And so that's another piece. Empower the team. So one was matching up the team to reflect the consumer. Mm-hmm. Two is empower the team to come up with the answers, especially when you don't know it.
I like it.
Number three, and probably lastly, and maybe most importantly, is I think the most important leadership quality that people need to have is humility. Absolutely. And the way that you can be humble as a leader is not to minimize your presence or minimize your existence or minimize your success or hide from it or be embarrassed by it. I'm not asking people to do that. What I'm asking people to do is raise up everybody else. Instead of shining the light on you, constantly just turn the light away from everybody, from yourself, and put it on everybody else. And so I think about the good work that you're doing or other people on your staff are doing or the people that are here today that are watching or doing. We need to shed that light on those unsung people who don't get the credit. Because I promise you the work product you're going to get from your team when you shine that light on them will be tenfold. And don't just do it with the pat on the back.
Yeah. Absolutely.
One last thing. There's a lot of people unemployed and businesses are opening back up in certain places. The number one thing that drives me crazy from people who manage departments or businesses is when they say, oh, that person's unemployed. They need the job. We could get them for less. Oh, that person doesn't have a lot of experience. We can get them for less. Oh, I got them for cheap. Oh, I got them for whatever. Or they weren't thinking about it and they left their last job and they took a job for less money because. I don't ever want to find out that a business owner or a manager is taking advantage of somebody because they're vulnerable in a moment. I don't ever want to find out that we're not promoting people or giving them raises because we feel like we can get away with not doing it. People will stay with you longer and work harder when you recognize them, reward them, hire them, and you see the value that they see themselves. And even if I take it a different level, if you help them see value in themselves that they don't see, I would much prefer to hire somebody and say, you know what? I think you're selling yourself a little short here. Yeah, you're not as good in this particular area, but we'll work on it together. But you are good in this other area and you can help my business. And I see a lot of value. Do you feel like you could bring value to my business? Because I know you can. And I feel like I haven't given you that opportunity, or I'm going to give you that opportunity, but I'm going to pay you the right wage. And if you ever feel like it's not right for you or it's not right for me, let's talk about it. But I always I have this little trick that I use. If somebody asks me, look, I'm looking to make around 50,000. Mm-hmm. So how did you establish that number? Well, that's what it covers my bills. Hmm. It's like, well, what if I was willing to pay you 60? Not because I want to do you a favor, but because that's the value I see in you. But that last 10, I need to tie it to performance. Mm-hmm. Can we have that deal? I'm going to give you the 50 you're asking for, but I actually want to pay you more. But I need us to be on the same elevator. And I want to see more elevator pay plans for people where we're not handing stuff out to people.
I agree. No,
So that's my pitch.
I like it. All this knowledge, I'm loving it. This was great. This was a great conversation. I wish we had time for, I didn't even get a chance to really get into most of the chat, and there's several more questions, and I wish we had time for all of those, but I do know your time is tight, and we appreciate you coming here. I will be calling you. And
I'm in. I'm
Okay.
in Detroit 2021. I'm making a $20,000 sponsorship, so I'm going to expect to get something for it.
Let's go.
And I will be attending if we're able to be there in person, and I would love to maybe hold some clinics. And if anybody is on here today or anybody that watches this that did not get their question answered, they can go on to Twitter. Nobody manages my social other than me. It may take me a hot minute. Use hashtag, what's your hashtag?
DETSW20.
Oh, okay, do that again because I lost you.
DETSW20.
DETSW20. Use that in the hashtag. Write me in there and I'll answer your questions.
Excellent.
I'm going to have to remember that. Monica, you're going to have to send me.
I will send it to you. I'll put it in the chat too.
I won't remember. Okay?
Thank you so much. I
so
so
much.
appreciate you, and we'll be in touch soon. And thank you all for joining us. Definitely was a great chat, and this is the perfect way to close out Startup Week. So thank you, Marcus Lemonis. Thank you, audience, and we'll have a good rest of your day and weekend.